believe with all of our hearts we can pray and see this through. It reminded me of a story that I may have told, but I remember years ago a missionary coming to church, and he was from Russia. And he was telling us how this was back when the church was under heavy persecution in that area. And he was telling me how they went to church on Sunday and how they found the church. There were no churches, so you had to meet in buildings. And there would be a woman every Sunday morning dressed like a prostitute walking through town. She would walk through the communities and everything. And people would begin to watch her. And the building she went into, that was the sign where church was going to be that day. And so people one by one would start coming out of their homes and their apartments and go in that building, and they'd have worship services. They had to smuggle Bibles in, and the preacher of that church would tear a page off the Bible and hand it to each congregation because they didn't have enough Bibles to pass around. But he wanted them to have some word, and he would tear a page off as they walked out so they could go home and read those scriptures. We have it made in this country. There should be a lot more happening in the supernatural realm today if the church would wake up and understand the great gift that God has given us. Hallelujah. 3 words. The rest of the story begins with the Lord speaking these 3 words in my heart. They are faith, hope, and love. Faith, faithfulness, faithful, or other variations are found 378 times in the Bible. Now that's the New American Standard Bible. That's the one I use. Hope, or a version of, is found 146 times in the Bible. Love is found 484 times in the Bible. 250 in the Old, 234 in the New. I want to deal with these 3 words for just a moment. From the New Testament writings and the Greek words. It's important for us to understand what something means. We know what faith means. We know what hope means. We know what love means. But what did the writer mean when he used the Greek or the Hebrew to write it? So the most common used Greek word for faith is spelled P-I-S-T-I-S. Pistis, I think is how you say it. And it is defined this way. It is the conviction of the truth of anything. Belief in the New Testament is a conviction or belief respecting man's relationship to God and divine things. In relation to God, it means the conviction that God exists and is the creator and ruler of all things, the provider and restorer of eternal salvation through Christ. In relation to Christ, it is strong and welcome conviction or belief that Jesus is the Messiah, through whom we obtain eternal salvation in the kingdom of God. What an amazingly important word faith is. It's a strong, important word. It's believing in God. Believing who He is. Believing that you're saved. I've known people in my lifetime, I'm sure some of you have if you've been going to church a long time, where they could not even understand how God could even love them enough. Because they thought they were so bad. They thought they were so wrong. I remember a guy walking into the transmission shop one day. A guy that I had talked to Jesus about many times. A guy that I was told was, and he was probably in his 60s then, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And he came in with an envelope. And he walked off to the other end of the building. And I looked at the envelope and it said, cook found dead, restaurant burned. It was all these things, newspaper clippings of people that had been killed and stuff. And his name was Junkie. We called him Junkie. I said, Junkie, is this you? And he just started crying his eyes out. I guess he'd heard me tell him about Jesus enough. But he didn't believe that Jesus could change him. He didn't believe that Jesus would come into his heart. I preached to him or shared. I don't preach. I share Jesus with everyone I get. I will see Junkie in heaven someday because he got saved and he gave his heart to the Lord. He was one of those people that for the most part had been neglected and rejected. But at some point in time, something touched his heart. And he wanted to know if Jesus could really save him after all he had done. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's what God called us to do. How could people in the early days of Christianity stand before Roman soldiers when they would come into their family, when they find out they were a Christian, and take their babies and watch them cut pieces of their babies' arms off and legs off and heads off, and said, we won't do it if you'll renounce Christianity. And they fell on their knees and they wept and they worshiped God that they were able to suffer persecution for His name. How could they do that and not say, please, yes, I forget. I don't want him. They wouldn't do it. Why? Because they've been saved. The world asks us to reject him every day. The world tells us how it has to be, what we have to accept, how we have to believe. God's Word will see you through every situation and every problem. How extremely important faith is. Hope, from the Greek word, is E-L-P-I-S. Elpis. I don't know how to say this stuff. Doug could do it. It has a very simple definition. It is the expectation of good. It's the expectation of good. And in the Christian sense, it is a joyful and confident expectation of eternal salvation. So hope is a very good word. It's a strong word. You may not have faith in someone, but you can have hope in them. And hope will eventually become what you need to see God do. The third word, love, has 5 different Greek words. But the most well-known that you've all heard, and this is not the way it's actually pronounced, but we pronounce it agape. That's the most used word for love. It means brotherly love, affection, goodwill, and benevolence. Now, I didn't hear nothing in there about condemnation or judgment. Didn't hear nothing in there. In all of that. Now, that doesn't withhold what the Scriptures say, or withdrain what the Christians say. It doesn't stop what the Bible says. We have to believe and accept the fact that there is sin in the world, and that people who die in their sins ain't going to be happy where they go. And we blame them when we need to blame us. Because somewhere, at some point in time, everyone that knows God will encounter someone that God sent to them to hear the story of Jesus Christ. If we turn our backs on them because they stink, or because we know who they are, or because we know how they lived, or because we know all the evil, bad, wrong things that they're doing, some of the most loving people I have ever met in my life won't walk in a church door and won't claim to be saved. But they already have the gift of being able to look beyond who someone is and understand that God can do anything in someone's life. God can do anything. So we have these important words. Faith and love. Or faith and hope. Very important words. But listen at how the Apostle Paul described these 3 words. 1 Corinthians 13, I'm going to read the whole chapter, 13 verses. If I speak with the tongues of many of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, if I know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I surrender my body to be burned but do not have love, it profits me nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffering. Well, we got problems, don't we? It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But if there are gifts of prophecy, they'll be done away. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there's knowledge, it will be done away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away. In verse 11, he said, when I was a child, I used to speak as a child, think like a child, reason like a child. When I became a man, I did away with childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I have been fully known. Paul understood that God knew who he was. Paul understood. Do you understand that God knows who you are? Do you know you can't fake it with Him? You can dress up, talk right, act right, and the whole community can think you're the prime example of the glory and the power. But God knows who you are. Ooh, hallelujah. God knows who we are. That should trouble us from time to time. We should be reminded from time to time that God knows who we are. Yeah, when you look over there and you see that boy, I went to school with his mama, he ain't no count. She wasn't either. But you didn't say it, you thought it. Guess what? God knows what you think. Betty loves that word. God knows who we are. Whew. I didn't even get that then. Now I'm like, whew. God knows who we are. Verse 13, last verse. But now faith, hope, love, abide. These three, these all abide. They're all a part of being a Christian. Faith is a part of being a Christian. Hope is a part of being a Christian. But the greatest of these is love. And I got, now this is Marvinology, okay? Crystal talking about theology. I don't have that. I have Marvinology. I'm thinking that the reason why love is so much more important, why it's the greatest, is because faith, can use faith to change a person's life. I can have faith that they'll change. I can use hope to change their life. I can have hope they'll change. But if I love them, oh, come on. If I love them, you say, Pastor, how in the world can I love this person the way that they are? I don't know. Why don't you ask Jesus how He loved you? How in the world did He love you? How in the world did even Him knowing you while He was hanging on the cross? Because He knew us all. And He knew who we were. He knew who we would be. He knew the life that we would live. And yet He still died and shed His blood for us because He knew us. Something had to happen to cause that, to redeem us, to take away from us the law. Every one of us in here would be killing a goat every week from eating catfish. Because that was the law. Couldn't eat a catfish. But we live in a world that has already designated who's worthy and who's not. And the church is no different at times. I'm not talking about this one. Y'all are awesome. But the church in places are just like the world. Oh, who is that? What are they doing here? Why they stagger in church? Don't they know they ought not be drunk coming to church? I told them when they fussed at me about that, I said, you park a van at every club in this county and bring them in here stoned. I don't care. I'll tell them about Jesus. Fill the seats with them. God bless them. He died for them like He died for me. I'm no better than they are. I may not have done the things they've done. I may not have been the person they are, but I was a man without God. And God come into my life and let me know, because that little lady that you heard 1,000,000 times, when I went there with a dare in my heart saying, God, if they make fun of my long hair, I'm out, I'm gone. And that little old lady with her blue jean skirt and her bun, I knew I had it made, and she cried for 45 minutes about talking about Jesus, and I didn't have no out. I had no out. He'll put you in the same situation. He'll put someone in your life that needs Jesus. He'll put someone in your life that needs Him. Verse 13 from the Amplified Bible says it this way. And now there remain faith, abiding trust in God and His promises, hope, confident expectation of eternal salvation, love, unselfish love for others, growing out of God's love for me. The Amplified Bible said it good, because my love for others grows out of my understanding of His love for me. And it says the choicest graces. These three are the choicest graces. If you got these three, you'll make it. You'll see God do things. You'll see Him work. You'll see if you got the choicest graces. But the greatest of these is love. Love. In this day and time, in much of the ministry, love is considered compromise. If you love people that have issues, if you love people that the church world thinks should be judged and condemned and told where they're going, I'm completely accept William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, and what he said one time back in the 1800s. Someone asked him, don't you wish you could take these sinners and hold them over hell and see what kind of eternal damnation they would face? And he said, no. I wish I could take all of my soldiers, that's what he called the people that worked with him, that walked the streets, that fed the hungry, that preached the gospel, that played their tambourines and music and sang gospel songs. He said, I wish I could hold them over hell so they could see the screams and the anguish and the hurt, because that would give them a passion to win souls. That would give them a passion to not quit, to not give up on the gospel and on Jesus. They would tell it, shout it from the rooftops. I actually met some of those folks years and years ago, back in the 70s, when we walked the streets of Dallas passing out tracts. They would be on the corners singing. I'd go over and sing with them and talk to them and embrace them because of the work that they were doing. And still today, they're changing people's lives. Why? Because they have a passion. The church sometimes loses its passion. We know how the big churches, they know how to bring great worship teams in, and I love them. We go places where they worship, and it's awesome. It's great. It's good. I love it, as long as it doesn't go 3.5 hours. But we can bring great preachers in, and they're all good. I listen to some. I get wisdom. I get understanding. I get revelation from some. But every church has one purpose, and that is to love its community. That's the reason the apostolic ministry moved and went from town to town, because they would set churches up in each town. They would put a pastor over them. They would put an evangelist in their midst. And it was there for them to love their community. We do as good a job as that as anybody does every year when we pass out the backpacks and the school supplies. We do. I brag on us, but I'm really not bragging on y'all. I'm giving God the glory that He's allowed us to do it. You see, He gives everyone opportunities. He gives everyone things that they can do. Some don't. We have. We've embraced our community. We love our community. God willing, we will do even more than we've ever done in the next coming years. Why? Because we love. We're learning to love. If you're here today and you don't know where you stand with God, you're in the right place. We don't ask what your problem is, what your issue is, what your difficulty is. That's between you and God. What we would like to do is pray with you. Just pray with you. Pray that God just, that you'll just embrace Him. And whatever it is you need to tell Him, tell Him. So, stand with me. And as you stand, if you would, close your eyes. I can tell you right now, whoever you are, that God loves you. The enemy will tell you that he doesn't, that you can't follow him. And I always remind everybody that you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, you're going to make a mistake, and God's not going to kick you off the road, throw you in the briars and forget about you. He's going to continue to love you. So if you're here and you kind of want to firm up your relationship with God, would you come? Would you come?